So this is something I came across in one of our local propaganda papers here in Montreal, the Journal de Montréal. Pretty mainstream, pretty big circulation paper. So it's in French, but I'm going to translate. Now, what this amounts to basically is they're literally giving you an idea of what your life is going to be like in the Great Reset, with all this carbon credit allotment, a restriction of where you can go, how you can live, what you can eat, what you can wear. They're literally giving you like a kind of blueprint here. So I'm going to tell you what it says, and I'm going to show you a little bit about where they got this information from. So here it says, living with the resources of a single planet. But is it possible to live within the limits of what the planet can offer? Yes, shows a recent study. So there is this study here, providing decent living with minimum energy, a global scenario. Basically, this is about, I think, a goal that they have in the Great Reset of getting people to live within what they would determine would be a ecologically sustainable limit. And they say despite population growth, 2050 global energy use could be reduced to 1960 levels. Kind of weird though, are they taking into account the fact that we have a lot more people than we did in 1960? I'm not sure. So they have some information on your lodging, your food, your clothing, transportation, of course, even water use. So this is how they envision your future is going to be as far as your lodging goes. In cities, people will all live in apartment buildings with multiple apartments. And in a rural area, they will be living in individual houses. One could count about 160 square feet of space per person. That is a tiny amount of space. Like that is basically the size of a smallish bedroom. I kind of think of the whole tiny home movement and how, in a way, that sort of helps this agenda, gets people used to the idea of living in little tiny spaces. I mean, if people want to do that, that's fine, but I see how it also plays into this. Each household could have appliances, a fridge and a freezer. Oh, well, thank you. A stove and a washing machine, but no dryer. They have decided. I mean, I guess that's where you draw the line. It's at the dryer for some reason. Food. Calories will come from 93% vegetable source. Cabbage and potatoes. One could, however, still reserve 7% of your calories from animal origin, with a proposed division of 1% of red meat, 2% of poultry, 3% of milk products, and 1% eggs. 1% of meat? I just imagine this single cube of beef on a plate of mostly rice. This would be equivalent to consuming about 33 pounds of meat per person per year. Okay, so let's say you have 33 weeks out of the year where you get 1 pound of meat. That would mean you could eat the equivalent of a quarter pounder, I guess 4 days a week, 33 weeks out of the year. This would be a reduction of 85% in the United States, for example. Again, here, you know, a lot of the stuff that we've been seeing in the media and on YouTube, trending with veganism in the last few years, it's kind of died out in the last 5 years or so, but I remember about 10 to 5 years ago, veganism was huge, and I think it was being promoted because this is also on the agenda, getting people to stop eating meat. Clothing. Okay, this is really weird. You would wear your clothing until they are used up before you buy new ones. So you're going to have to basically wear out your clothes. You can't just buy something because you feel like having a change. The lifespan of shoes would, for example, be estimated at 365 days of wearing. So does that mean you get like one pair of shoes per year? For coats, it would be 562. So like almost 2 years, year and a half. For pants, 300. How did they figure out that your shoes last you 365 days, but your pants last you 300? Anyway, and t-shirts and shirts, we would be talking about 112 days. So, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking they're going to allot you some, once you have this digital currency and it's programmable, see, that's where this comes into play. Your programmable digital currency will tell you when you're up for your spending allowance. I mean, this is your money that you earned, but now it's kind of like your own money is being rationed back to you, or maybe you're on basic income and that's being rationed. So your digital wallet, it's only going to allow you to buy a shirt every 112 days. I mean, I'm sure they're going to have to fine tune some of this. How many shirts exactly do you get to have in total? Do you get just this one pair of shoes once a year and the rest of the time your wallet doesn't work? I don't know, but they're obviously trying to figure it out here. Transportation. Get ready to use a lot less of it. For a country with a low density such as Canada, you could cover the following kilometer distance per year for each type of transport. So a car that runs on gas, 1,700 to 2,600 kilometers. Now, I do not drive very much. I know that I drive a lot less than my friends, and I cover about 5,000 kilometers a year, and that is going just very small distances within the city. I don't commute, and I might make maybe 2 or 3 trips outside of the city per year, like, to go to the country or go on vacation, and so that's very little. So I'm thinking I would have to cut my distance that I travel in a year in half to meet this. This is like nothing. Train or metro, 3,400 to 5,200 kilometers. So I guess they would be encouraging you to take the public transportation a lot more. I'm not sure, like, if they're keeping in mind that for some people it's a lot harder to take public transportation, such as in our family, where we have someone who's in a wheelchair. Also, our son who's autistic. I mean, when he was a lot younger, it was very hard to take public transportation. So I don't know, would they consider stuff like the needs of people with disabilities or whatever else? Or I guess not just tough luck for you. You just, figure it out. The bus, I guess, on top of the train and the metro. So you get that much. So you get a lot more allotment for public transport than you do for your own car. And plane, 1,000 kilometers, which they point out is the equivalent of a return trip Montreal to Toronto. So it's basically nothing. So it says here, thus the long air voyages will disappear almost completely from our lives. So we'll basically be going back to how it was before there was air travel, and back in a time when people really just didn't take a lot of vacations. They didn't go to Europe and they didn't go to Mexico or whatever. So that's the aim, is to have us go back to that. And they also even have your sort of rations for water laid out. Use of water. The average Canadian could take a short, hot shower each day. The average Canadian. What does that mean? Are there some people who won't be able to take these short, hot showers? How short are you talking about here? This is like institutional showers that are timed for 5 minutes or maybe 3. Are there some people who are going to be allowed to take longer showers? Maybe they pay for carbon credits or something? Could have hot water for dishes and the household. You would have the use of about 10 liters of water each person to prepare your food, on top of course, water to drink. So, I mean, whatever it is that they allow you to have, you got to just make do with that. So then it wraps up with this: are these objectives attainable? Attaining this kind of level of consumption of energy as possible, says Eric Pinault, professor at the Institut des Sciences de l'Environnement de l'Université de Québec à Montréal. So he's a professor at the UQAM University in Montreal. The Québécois lived like this not so long ago. Right. try to get people to go back to how people lived, 100 years ago and see how they like it. I mean, not that long ago, children also worked in factories. That doesn't mean it's a good thing to go back to it. We judged that the quantity of energy that was consumed in richer countries in the 1960s, that's a zone in which we could find ourselves and that would be viable. Again, there were a lot less people in the 1960s. So does that mean that that's where we're trying to aim for the total consumption that was in the 60s? Because that would be even a lot less per person. Or are we aiming for that on a per person level? This was actually not such a great misery, he explains. But for this lifestyle to be possible, many decisions have to be made at the collective level, agreed the experts. We have to make collective choices which are different, and our governments, federal and municipal, would create an architecture of choices that would make that the most natural choice, the least expensive, and the most pleasant, and the easiest would also be the most ecological choice. So that's what they would do. They would pass all kinds of new laws at the federal and even municipal level that would make you just want to do these things, because probably doing it any other way would become like unsustainable for you economically. So I guess this wouldn't bother rich people. I think this would be like a really two-tiered society. And we're not in this context right now, said Laura Waridell, another eco-science professor at UQAM. To get these politicians to make these kind of decisions, it's important to be conscious also of the changes these would have on your life. A political program that tries to put in place this vision of transition in the actual state of public opinion, that would never pass. So they can't just throw it on you. They have to condition you slowly. He says there would be big protests, much bigger than what we have seen in Quebec. He's referring to the pandemic, apparently. So he knows that the politicians wouldn't be able to just say, like, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do now. You're going to have restrictions on your lodging, your food, your clothing, your transportation, and your water. They wouldn't be able to do that. They'd have to prepare people mentally for it. But I'd say that with the pandemic, there's been a lot of headway made, certainly for transportation. People are really getting used to not being able to go anywhere. So that's one down. You can put a check mark on that one. And I think this would probably come a lot later once you have that digital currency that's programmable. This, I think, is happening right now with the price of food just going up so much. People are already starting to adjust their food budget and their consumption. And this, well, I don't know. We'll see how that turns out. And the water. So one last thing. So this was based on this study here. So I looked into where they got their funding from, and it came from the Leverhulme Trust. And so I looked whether there was a connection with the World Economic Forum, and I noticed that a lot of people who are involved with the forum have also been involved with this trust, have received funding from them. But that's about as far as it could go in terms of the connection. I mean, they don't say who is donating money to this trust, but you can see like what kind of projects they have here. So I wanted to give you a heads up about that. That's pretty much, they're like laying it out for you and putting it right there in the newspaper. This is where we're heading. I mean, it could take quite a while to get to this point where we're actually living this way, but I'm pretty sure that that is the goal. So that's it. Wanted to give you a heads up. Thanks for listening to me, and I'll see you next time.